Already on the wall. There should be a microphone here. Is there a microphone somewhere, Bruce?
소리 나.
We're searching for the microphone, so.
Professor Hall, it's working, and we can
You can hear?
her from here.
Okay, it's a clever microphone. But be as loud as you can. Thank you.
Okay, let me start my presentation. Hello everyone, my name is Tyra Choi. I'm studying the EU Studies at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies in Korea. I'm very honored to be invited by RMIT University and have a chance to share my ideas about European identity with great professors and great students here today. My subject today is a European identity in terms of European citizens and politics. Well, I have spent 2 years in France and I met a lot of Europeans from various countries. And the interesting thing is that the degree to which people across Europe view themselves as Europeans is so different according to each individuals. And even though we non-European people see them as Europeans eventually, that was the starting point that I got interested in identity issue. And this identity issue has been mostly dealt in terms of culture or social structure, but today I'd like to approach this issue in a practical way rather than theoretical one, and related to politics, especially to the European citizens' involvement in politics at the EU level. So, this is the table of contents. And the EU has achieved one of the successful integration for the past 50 years, which started from 6 countries and now has 28 member states. It has overcome many obstacles and nationalism of nation states and became an excellent model of regional integration. Since the deep economic recession recently, however, it seems like further integration would be difficult as citizens in the member states doubt its effectiveness and show growing grievance and indifference. However, world politics these days require the EU to establish deeper integration and a stronger union than ever to compete against China, US, and other new powers. I attribute the fundamental cause to the lack of identity that obstructs further integration in the EU. I'd like to cover this issue linked to the EU politics and the citizens. And lastly, I'd like to suggest that establishing the identity can be an answer to settle peace in Northeast Asia these days. Well, in the preambles to the Treaty of Rome in 1957, it is mentioned to lay the foundation for an ever closer union among the people of Europe. The integration of the EU is not just about the elimination of barriers to trade or the free movement of capital, goods, and labor, but also about the joint political and external actions. However, one of the major obstacles to European integration is the ideology of or nationalism. The EU has 28 member states now, which surely makes it complicated to understand each other and difficult to speak with one voice. And no form of identity is ever complete nor stable. We should consider it as an integrated symbolic structure with time dimensions, which provides important competences to individuals, such as assuring continuity and consistency. Nation-state produces a new community with a collective identity. And one of the key questions in the construction of a new Europe is how national identities can be partially overcome. Well, there has been no distinct political loyalty or public sentiment, even though each of the EU member states transferred some part of its own power and the right for the decision-making in political action. What makes it so difficult to achieve that? The high rate of voter abstention and low participation at European elections show that citizens' indifference or even hostility to the EU. Following figures from Eurobarometer show the citizens' low involvement in political activity at the EU level. Well, as we can see in Figure 1, local and national elections are regarded as more effective ways of influencing political decisions than being a member of an NGO or voting in European elections. Just 54% of the respondents think that voting in European elections is an effective way, and 42% consider it as ineffective. Well, the identity has been a key issue for the citizens' support to the community and has involvement in the European political process. There had been discussion among leaders in Europe after World War II about how to reorganize political arrangements across Europe in order to prevent another war. However, there were neither strong political supports from European citizens nor a common identity that could support enough to accomplish Europe-wide political project. That is because there were little exchange or communication among citizens in Europe and almost no vigorous economic or political relations among European countries before the war. However, the economic interdependency among member states has brought the movement toward political integration and leaders to settle peace in Europe. How could this biggest integration be possible after two fatal wars? One of the major reasons is that opening markets within Europe and freely crossing borders have offered European citizens much more opportunities of education and jobs than before, and that eventually motivated the citizens to share a European identity and to support the enlargement of the EU. Well, what the European Council aimed for to form a people's Europe is in the first place is, as you can see in the screen, the European Council said considers it essential that the community should respond to the expectations of the people of Europe by adopting measures to strengthen and promote its identity and its image, both for its citizens and for the rest of the world. The European Council viewed the citizen as a participant in the political process in the community, hoping to increase the citizens' involvement in and understanding of the political process in the community institutions. The European Union has been sustained and monopolized only by small groups of elites so far. That has caused the indifference of the citizens regarding their government's decisions or their involvement at the level of the EU. The future of the EU is, however, dependent on ordinary citizens. Politicians are mostly affected by voters' preferences, which influences on national directions or policies at the European level in the long run. Also, the more the national populations realize how deeply the decisions of the European Union influence in their daily lives, the more interested they will become in making use of their democratic rights as citizens of the EU. That is to say, whether the people of Europe accept or reject a European identity would decide the future of Europe. Well, there are, according to many scholars who try to find the relations between the degree of the European identity and the citizens' living standards, there are three types of European citizens according to the degree to which people across Europe view themselves as Europeans. A group of citizens who think themselves as Europeans exclusively, another group with the citizens who stick to the nationalism, and the other one with the situation of Europeans. The citizens in small but economically privileged groups think themselves as Europeans and support EU policies. They are more open to EU coordination of common issues and usually have more chances of interactions with other Europeans. And in this figure, 1/5 of the respondents think themselves as Europeans. Comparing to 2011, the latest data in 2013 shows 3% of decrease. And those who belong to the group that sees itself as national more than European are the less privileged part of the society, such as the less educated, the blue-collar workers, and the elderly. They are usually indifferent to the European Union or other communities and more dependent on their own national government. They view the EU as a threat to national sovereignty and have a dissatisfaction with the government's participation in the EU. As you can see in the chart, 2/5 of the respondents belonging to this group. The rate of this group has been slightly increased since the second half of the year of 2012. And lastly, according to these scholars, it is the middle class that takes a big part of the group with a situational EU identity that has a European identity in occasional case. Citizens belonging to this group support their governments participating in the EU so that they can benefit from open European market and easy access to other countries for study and travel. On the other hand, this group is dependent on their governments at the same time, expecting to use the national political system to influence the EU policies. Low rate of populations in Europe see themselves as Europeans, as I said. And as mentioned before, these people are mostly belonging to the most privileged members of society. It can be said that European policies have benefited the people who are already the most privileged. Also, those who have a situational European identity are belonging to the middle class, middle and upper classes or middle classes. They also benefited from the European project by interactions across borders. These two groups with the European identity benefit directly from Europe, which makes them from identities they share with people across borders. They're willing to vote in political parties, so they want to attract these voters. According to this figure, those who are more educated and have white-collar workers tend to participate more actively in influencing political decision-making. Well, so as we can see in this chart, the question was, in general, does the EU conjure up for you a very positive, fairly positive, neutral, fairly negative, or very negative image? As you can see, the blue line is a positive image, but it has been decreased, and the red line is a negative image, and it has been continuously increased. And this chart is a similar one. The question was, would you say that you are very optimistic, fairly pessimistic, or very pessimistic about the future of the EU? And the tendency of the pessimism is getting increased. On the contrary, the positive image is getting decreased. So, one of the functions of political identity is to sustain citizens' allegiance and loyalty to their community because it helps people determine the character and self-understanding of their political community. Since the mixed nature of the EU causes deep difference in the European polity, however, it must be a difficult challenge to establish a political identity in Europe. Also, the efforts to establish a European political identity have faced some conflicts and collision with nationalism or chauvinism. So, the stability and sustainability of the European Union require that its members share a sense of belonging to the Union. If its nature is uncertain and ambiguous, however, it would be hard to achieve that kind of sense, right? And therefore, loyalty toward the community can be achieved when there is a strong identification that holds members together. So, according to the Habermas, who is a very famous scholar studying the Europe, according to Habermas, he proposed the following conditions for an extension of the process of identity formation beyond national boundaries. which is the emergence of a European civil society, the construction of a European-wide public sphere, and the shaping of a political culture that can be shared by all European citizens. Among these three conditions, in my opinion, the European public sphere directly helps the citizens across Europe